You are listening to Spotlight Sessions with Justin Bamforth. The program provides an inside look at the creative field through exclusive conversations with industry professionals. Every episode is recorded live each month in the Adobe Creative Career Discord. Check out the show links to learn more and join for free. This episode was previously recorded before a live listening audience. My next guest is Backner, a pioneer and visionary working at the forefront of art, music, and emerging tech, where she shares an optimistic vision for the future of creativity, moving away from social feeds to digital spots where the goal isn't just to be seen, but to belong. You see, Bay is the head of live experiences for the 3D virtual world Decentraland, where users can attend, develop, and create all sorts of exciting content. At Decentraland, she leads the creation of these incredible, immersive events and large-scale festivals, all inside this gorgeous user-created environment. But Bay is also an assistant professor of emerging technologies at Berklee College of Music's European campus, where she helps shape the next generation of creatives engaging with new tools and digital spaces. With an impressive background and a degree in physics from Oxford University, her work explores how XR, or extended reality, Web3, and gamification are transforming identity, community, and participation in culture. In fact, she has been recognized as one of the leading voices in Web3 gaming, with her projects featured in Vogue, Vanity Fair, CNN, Wired, and Dazed. I've wanted to have her on the show for a while now, so that all of you have an idea where the internet is headed. Beyond AI, since I know you're already burned out by that, but we're going to get into immersive technology, virtual worlds, and how artists and designers can start thinking about this new digital space today and well into the future. Bay Backner, my friend, welcome to the show.
Justin, it's awesome to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me on.
Well, I should say, chat, that Bay has one of the loveliest voices on the internet, so between the two of us, you're going to be soothed and relaxed, but stay with us because you're also going to be stimulated and excited. There is a lot of incredible opportunity with this tech that a lot of really, really smart, talented people are quietly getting into and have been for a few years now. In fact, a mutual friend of ours, Tang Poco, who first showed me around Decentraland and introduced me to the incredible community there years ago, introduced me to you. So let's start there, because Decentraland is fascinating, but it got looped into the whole metaverse hype for a while, but it's so much more. In fact, as you put it, we're sort of in a post-hype era, right? Which could be a good thing for emerging creatives.
I think it's the best time for emerging creatives. It's that time when the eyes of the world are looking at other things, other shiny new concepts. But we know every single time that we have a hype cycle around a new technology, you have that initial hype, the initial press, media jump into thinking this is going to be the next big thing. And then very quickly we have the pushback, the descent, what we often call the valley of despair, this sense of this technology is never going anywhere. And then slowly, behind the scenes, the creators that are working to build or advance the technology keep going. And then suddenly down the line, we find ourselves all adopting, using things that seemed like science fiction just a few years earlier. We see it with the adoption of the internet itself from the 90s into the mid-2000s. And we're seeing it again with these immersive technologies that we are still building and experiencing and making into pretty exciting places while the world is looking somewhere else.
For those in the audience who may not understand what exactly the metaverse is or what digital worlds are, how would you describe it? How would you differentiate it from Decentraland?
I think it's a really good question. This word metaverse had a huge hype when Meta was renamed from Facebook to Meta. And what happened was metaverse was actually taken from a science fiction novel called Snow Crash. And that was this dystopian vision of a connected space where people would live their lives. And so this word metaverse was taken to describe the next evolution of the internet. So rather than the internet being a 2D space, it being a 3D space in which we could live. So create a whole parallel life to our real life identity, extend ourselves into other spaces, virtual economies, virtual realities, and it's suddenly become this internet evolved into a 3D space. And that being connected. So just like the internet isn't separate websites, the metaverse as a concept wouldn't be separate virtual worlds. It would be a whole thing with interoperable standards in which you could jump around. Now, obviously, that is not where we are today. But there are a few organizations that were created by users and visionaries that saw the potential of this 3D connected experiential world and tried to make it like the open internet. So just like the internet isn't owned by one entity, there were a few creators, hackers, developers that thought, actually, we wouldn't want this to be owned by one entity, and we want the future of the internet, the 3D future of the internet, to be decentralized. That means that it's not owned by one person. It is distributed across multiple servers, and the assets of that world are owned by the users themselves. So the land, the clothes, the wearables, the interactions, they are not owned by a single corporation like a Meta or an Epic Games. They are owned by the users themselves, and the ideal is that these assets can be taken across different experiences, different worlds, different places that you would move in your virtual life. This is still a way off, but Decentraland is one of those places that set out to do that, so that everything that you experience in Decentraland is either managed and created and owned by a user or by a not-for-profit foundation, which is what I'm part of, called the Decentraland Foundation, or what's called a decentralized autonomous organization, which is like a governing body that you're part of as a user, and then you can contribute to the decisions that are made within the world itself.
There's a lot of exciting possibilities out there, but like Bae mentioned, we're kind of at the very start of this.
The very start.
Let's talk about what the Web3 movement is, because you kind of alluded to that earlier, but I don't think a lot of the audience knows exactly what this means. Because when we think of the internet, we think of it as just always being there. But we know that it's gone through phases. And we're right on the edge of the end of Web 2, the beginning of Web 3. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, again, it can seem a bit overwhelming, but it's kind of this simple idea of how much you decentralize, you take these things and make them accessible. So, for example, Web 1 was about information. Suddenly, with the first internet sites and providers, I could access information wherever I was in the world, and I could have the access to the same information that someone else in a different geographic or economic setting could. So we could say that that information was decentralized. It was taken out of the hands of gatekeepers and decision makers, and suddenly we could access it on a much more free way. Then for Web 2, that took the power out of the hands of publishing houses. So suddenly, as a user, I could have decentralized publishing. I could publish anything I wanted on the internet through social media platforms. I could use my blogs, I could share. Suddenly, I didn't need the gatekeepers of publishing houses, distributors, newspapers to start sharing that information. And so you have that progression of how much information and then how much information can I share. Now, Web 3 is, again, this concept of a sort of a step up from that. So saying that I can read information, I can share information, and in Web 3, I should be able to own that information. So in Web 3, I maintain the ownership of my assets, my IP, my identity, my connections, and suddenly I have much more ownership over that. So decentralization of ownership in a Web 3 place. That's the ideal.
So essentially, it's moving away from information, which is Web 1, to publishing, Web 2, to ownership, which is Web 3, right?
Exactly.
Why is ownership such an important next step?
It's a really good question. And that's something we talk about a lot in context of social media. So I know that all of us on this podcast are creators or aspiring creators. And when we start to publish our work on social media platforms, what happens is that we lose ownership over that work. So if we read the terms and conditions over the platforms, that what we share can be used to make money out of that work. It can be used to train AI, more importantly, going forward. It can be used to promote the platform, and also it can be taken down. So we can fall foul of algorithmic moderators. I have worked, and a good friend of mine is part of Don't Delete Art, a campaign to protect artists against algorithmic censorship. And this is because we don't actually own our profiles, we don't actually own our data on these platforms. So we don't really have any recourses when our data is used for something that we don't agree with, or our work is taken down because we violated agreements with the platform itself.
How can you really have a decentralized center that is, housing all of these platforms, this tech, this data, without it being controlled by someone or something? How do you work around that?
Another really great question. We're figuring it out. So, like all new technologies, they require new structures behind the scenes. And a lot of people get involved with worlds like Decentraland, one, either because they want to hang out. And I think this is something we're going to be talking about, that one of the reasons behind Decentraland is that it just has become this place for creative people to go, hang out, meet other people, experience new things together. That's one reason. Number two is that they're really interested in this concept. So how do you create something that isn't owned by a centralized corporate entity in a digital space? And we haven't really figured it out yet. There's a lot of very intelligent, passionate people trying to do that. You can see it happening across discussion boards all over the internet about how we actually take our data, our IP, our creativity out of the hands of these large corporations and bring it back to the owner. And I think anyone listening to this who gets excited about it, who is passionate about these things, take a look at things that are happening right now in decentralized platforms. We can talk about decentralized social media, we can talk about decentralized virtual worlds, but it's a whole movement right now around how can we as creatives take back some of that power and actually maintain ownership over these amazing things that we're producing.
What makes a digital space feel like a place people want to stay in and not just scroll past? What's the secret to that?
People, like 100%. And I think that's something that's been really interesting in talking about socials, that I remember the early days of Instagram. It was the early days of X, that it was about making connections with people and connecting with the people that you cared about. And slowly, as that commercialization has happened, as the corporations have got more powerful, we're seeing that they're promoting the content that pays them. So the algorithms are promoting more and more content that is paid content, that is clickbait, that is potentially stuff that we need to be moderating against, because it feeds those algorithms. It brings eyeballs, it brings user time, and it's taken us away from that initial idea of social media, which was connection. And so in building the 3D spaces for that, it's about going back to that connection between people. And having connection as being at the forefront of the decisions that are being made in terms of the experiences, how the platforms work, how we moderate them. And again, that reality is what people stay for. I think we can talk about Web3, we can talk about decentralization. A lot of people came in to the virtual worlds, metaverses, spaces online because of all that hype. And the reason people stayed is because they met people they cared about in those environments, and they were having the conversations that were inspiring them and made them want to be there.
Yeah, and I can certainly attest to that. It was really unexpected, I should say. When I first stepped into Decentraland, just the welcoming aspect of it, the fact that there are these users who are, complete strangers to me, totally anonymous. I had no idea who they were, but there was something. It literally was like a community. It was like you're showing up at like an event by yourself or like a networking event, and then all of a sudden you see this one random person approaching you with open arms and saying like, "Hey, come on in. We've been expecting you. Come hang out. Let me show you around. Let me take you on a tour." It was really amazing. And going back to one of the things that I started to see early on in these virtual worlds, and not just Decentraland, but other ones too, is this total anonymity aspect. The desire to not like dox oneself, but rather to show up as one's true self, free of judgment or desire for clout, and this opportunity to express without the pressure to perform for the feed, so to speak. What is it about these virtual environments that helps foster that mindset?
I think I see Tang in the audience, Tampoco, who I think introduced you to Decentraland. I have always known Tangpoco as her avatar name. Like, I've worked with Tangpoco, I've collaborated in my work in Decentraland, but I know Tang through her works in Decentraland and the things that she's produced. It's very much like open source software. If you know any coder friends or you're a coder yourself, you contribute to a project and you're known for your contributions, not your geography, your economic backgrounds, who you are, how you identify. You're showing who you are through what you contribute to the community, to the experiences, to the connections that you're making. And I think that's very, very compelling. It also allows you to try on different identities because you have your avatar, you can style it however you want, you can act, create, display in any way you choose, and experiment in a way that's much more freer because we are taking away all of those assumptions that you make as soon as you meet someone. And that's totally human. We can't escape those immediate, Daniel Kahneman calls it those system one thinking, those immediate assumptions you make about someone when you first meet them. But in a digital world, we completely remove all of that. And so when I'm working with someone, I often don't know their gender, I don't know their age, I don't know their geography unless they're open and we'll talk about it. And it gives a level of human connection that I've never experienced in any other space. That without those assumptions, you're taking people completely on what they're creating, what they're doing, and how they are choosing to present themselves.
Web3 really requires a total change of thought. It's really fascinating. I don't know quite how to describe it. You really have to you have to experience it for yourselves. That's why I'm really pushing this Decentraland platform, because it's a great way to kind of get your feet wet and to explore what the future has to offer, not to mention the opportunity that exists for you. Because, Bay, we've seen it in these virtual environments, these extremely creative individuals creating incredible environments and wearables. These are clothing and accessories for your avatar, and music, like film, like there's just so many different things. But it can be a little daunting when you're jumping into a new platform such as Decentraland, and you really have no frame of reference. You don't have any context. You don't have any connections. You just throw yourself in there. But there's something that happens in Decentraland, something that you guys had added to the platform, which really became like this welcoming statement.
The wave. Mm-hmm.
Why don't you talk about that?
So if you've never been in a virtual world, you might not know there's something called an emote. So these are movements you make with your avatar. So obviously you have your default emotes, you can run around, you can dance. One of those default emotes that comes stacked with your avatar is a wave. And in Decentraland, that's really one of these key emoji. You can think of it as a 3D emoji. And these are the key points of contact between avatars. And creators create different emotes as well. If you're an animator and you want to start thinking about designing avatar emotes, there's a whole range of creative spectrum of opportunity there to really get your teeth into. But if you're just coming in for the first time, stacked into your avatar is this wave emote. And it's really this key thing about Decentraland. You'll notice when you come in, people will be waving at you. And beyond that, people will be asking you, hey, how did you find us? When did you come in? Is this your first day? It's this opening to conversation, which happens almost immediately when you jump into, it's called Genesis Plaza. It's where you arrive for the first time into Centraland. And you will see avatars waving, you'll see avatars dancing. It's about connecting with the individuals behind the avatar. And I get asked a lot when people jump in, they go, are you bots? Like, are you NPCs? Because just these people are talking to me. And it's no, there aren't any bots. These are real people enjoying real connection just through a new digital medium that is evolving daily right now.
How did you first get into this space? What initially drew you into it?
That's a really good question. I come from two worlds. So I come from a technology world and I come from an arts world. And I know probably quite a few listeners have the same kind of background, and it's really difficult to choose one or the other. And combining them up until quite recently was also difficult. So I did two kind of simultaneously. I was in tech startups, but simultaneously I was a practicing painter. I was exhibiting in galleries in London and art fairs in Europe, but they were two separate lives. And then when Web3 arrived, I started experimenting with NFTs, like a lot of us. I started experimenting with the possibilities of owning digital artworks, of experimenting with where this world would take us. And I was asked to open a gallery in Decentraland. And I thought this was an incredible folly. Like, this was the worst idea anyone could have made. So they told me, please, we need a virtual gallery in Decentraland. So the company I was working with bought some land and asked me to build a gallery. And at the same time, it was the start of the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. And so I pivoted to make the gallery into a fundraiser for Ukraine at that moment, the real start of what has now turned out to be a long-term conflict. And I was working at the time with quite a few Ukrainian-based NFT artists. So we decided to use the show to support these artists, and also to support, there was a giving, it was called the Giving Block, which was a donation-based Web3 company that would then give to projects that would support the people fleeing the conflict. So again, thought this was a bit of a folly, but hoped to make a little bit for a good cause out of the gallery. Opened the gallery, and from that moment on, I was absolutely hooked because of the community. So we opened this gallery, and I found myself having in-depth conversations with art, with people like Tampoko, she was there at that first exhibition, in a way that I did not experience outside of some of the major galleries in London. That it became this place where I could share work that I really believed in and have inspiring discussions with people that really cared about experiences in that world. They cared about the artists, and they cared about how this could be used to do really interesting things in the world. And I also found myself shopping for a digital dress, because I thought, well, if I'm doing an art gallery opening in a virtual world, I have to buy a dress. And this was in the early days of all this. So I had to transfer money into crypto, and then I had to transfer crypto in two different ways. And
Yep.
it was, complicated. And I found myself doing it because I cared enough about the experience to care what my avatar was wearing. And I thought, if I want that, if I would be happy going through all these steps, as a skeptic about this, I suddenly thought, gosh, there's something here, and I really want to be part of this. And I haven't left since.
I remember that gallery exhibit. That was, yeah. I was there probably on my own, because I did a lot of solo exploring. but I remember seeing those images. I remember seeing those pieces, and I thought they were really cool. I remember, and correct me if I'm wrong, there were a few wearables that kind of reflected that as well at the time. I don't know if they were directly connected, but I'd gotten a few of those.
There was a lot of fundraising going on, and still to this day, like Decentraland, the creators do a lot of engagement with good causes, with up and coming shows, and yeah, the wearables are created. Everything that you see on the Decentraland marketplace, which is where you can go shopping for wearables, a lot of them are super duper cheap. A lot of them are kind of investment pieces, so you can all ranges, and also you can earn what we call credits that you can spend in the marketplace by being and contributing and being part of the world. So don't worry, it's completely accessible in terms of creating your avatar's identity. But because those wearables are created by individual creators, they're not created by a Fortnite's design team or Meta's design team. They're designed by individuals working from small studios or working individually. And so you get so much personality and fundraising and good causes coming through. I think I've seen one recently for the Dana, the flooding in Spain a year and a half ago. We've had ones for epilepsy recently. So it becomes this expression of people's passions and projects behind the scenes as well.
A lot of companies that come in who are intrigued by these ideas that are presented and these creations. I remember there was a lot of fashion shows happening.
Actually, pretty well for me, that hype has died down because a lot of companies came in for the press when we had the hype cycle. So it's really interesting to see which companies come in for hype and press and which companies come in because they understand the community and want to be part of the community. And there's a big, big difference between those two camps. So we've seen less of the companies that want to come in and have a quick press release about something, more of the companies that actually want to build a relationship with the users of the platform because either they see them as a real font of creativity, inspiration, this kind of look at what the next thing is. And as we've been talking about this evolution of the internet, where is digital media going? Into 3D environments, into gaming, into this place where so much experimentation is possible. And if you're a edge brand looking at, okay, what is the next thing? You want to be connected with creators working in these spaces. And so we've seen much more that transition of big brands with corporate PR departments wanting a press release to smaller brands who are looking at, actually, this is where the future is going to be. I want to be connecting with the people creating, making, and directing where the space is moving to.
That's good. That's refreshing to hear because this is where the real magic is gonna take place.
I think so. It's exciting. I think that's the big thing. It's this exciting sense of possibility that is being created right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And like the Baba Sheep just posted in the chat, the internet was a small concept to begin with, and present day is the most powerful, useful, and necessary force in our lives. So keep in mind, we're at the very early stages of all of these things. And if you can get on board now, you can teach others later. You can be at the forefront of all of this. It's incredible, the opportunity here. And like I mentioned, some of the creatives, some of their work I've already seen in these virtual spaces is absolutely mind-blowing. So find a way to kind of take what you do and just expand that into a different realm, so to speak. Talk to me about your work in the music realm, because this aspect of your life I know zero about, but I do know there is a huge music scene in these virtual worlds, especially at Decentraland.
There is. Music's been a part of my life for a long, long time. And again, I'm sure a lot of our listeners will be the same, that these kind of multiple interests, which are quite hard to combine into one career, and then suddenly you find yourself being able to do this. I was a musician as a child for a long time, was pushed quite quite into various instruments. Never thought it would be part of my life in a professional sense. And then suddenly I was asked to lead a course at Berklee College of Music about emerging technologies. I was initially asked in to produce like a 3 hour introduction about metaverse concepts and Web3. And from that, I was asked to create a whole course that I run every year about how emerging musicians, label owners, AR, artist representatives can actually use tech for themselves simultaneously. Because I became the head producer at the Decentraland Foundation, I was producing Decentraland's Music Festival, which is a big event. So hundreds of performers, some big names in EDM we've had. It became this kind of cultural place for musicians experimenting with virtual technologies. And so these kind of two simultaneous things happened, and I became more and more interested in how musicians can use emerging media. So I now run a series of events called Takeover Tuesdays, where we invite some of the leading musicians and streamers on Twitch. And we do these crossover experimental parties where they stream into Decentraland Theatre and they also stream out to their audiences. And we're looking at how that impacts their practice, what the kind of experiences we make in the theatre to accompany it. We're just going through another theatre update. So if you jump in on one of these Takeover Tuesdays, they happen at 8 p.m. UTC every Tuesday. You will see there's special effects, there's things falling from the sky, there's virtual foam, and pushing that each update to really explore what is possible for musicians in virtual spaces. How can we make these experiences immersive, interactive, not thinking that we're going to replace real life concerts, but creating something different, this other media form that musicians can explore and really think about what that means to their existing fandoms and also people discovering their work for the first time.
Speaking of music festivals, we recently just had Coachella here in the States. But is it too far-fetched of a concept to think of having a simultaneous live and virtual event happening?
Not at all. No, I mean, I can see in the audience we've got Make. Make runs a series of amazing concerts that are live. He has performers. There's an amazing performer called Stony Eye who actually performs live during sets as well as creating the music live during an immersive installation that happens in Decentraland. So these feedback loops of live activation twinned with metaverse, or virtual world, however you want to call that interaction between 3D internet, immersive media, and live performance, live activation is really happening now. And people like Make in the audience are at the forefront of figuring out how this works in practice and how it creates something new, not just replicating things that we can see in real life, but another layer to music experience that we suddenly able to access because these spaces are getting mature enough that we know we can have 130 people in one space simultaneously having that interaction together. You can see how everybody else is emoting, what they're wearing, how they're changing their wearables to react to the music, how they're wearing meme wearables to pick up on something that the performer has just said. So you have these waves of interaction that are just becoming possible as this technology matures enough that you can have enough people in one space experiencing one immersive 3D thing together and have that synchronization so that you're all seeing the same thing and you're seeing, importantly, how everybody else is reacting.
I remember at one event, there was a live feed camera on a huge, digital billboard over in DCL, and it was showing the live audience at this one music festival. And I can't remember which music festival it was, but I remember the cameras in reality, they displayed the virtual reality, which is where we were, and we could see the live audience. The audience could see us live in the virtual realm. It was really fascinating. It was surreal, but it was like that potential. It kind of like clicked for me. I'm like, that's how it works.
Yeah. And that conversation between media forms, I think, yeah, just that creativity that you can get between that conversation with. So if you're in the audience in a Twitch stream that's going out live to a completely different audience. So, for example, we had Dirk Neuenfels, an amazing DJ. He was streaming out loud to more than 1,000 fans on his Twitch stream, at the same time in theatre, running around as an avatar, streaming out. And obviously, you get this interplay between the two audiences. Memes that are happening in the chat in Twitch then get translated into theatre. You have ones being spammed in the chat in theatre that then comes into the chat in Twitch. You have an interplay of emojis and emotes. So Dirk was talking about fire, like what do you call them, like fire cannons on his chat. So then there's suddenly, obviously, people in Decentraland that have fire cannon emotes start firing fire in the theatre. And it's that real interaction between what you can create visually in a 3D object, which is limitless in terms of that difference between real life. That in a festival, you don't have a huge backpack with you of props that you can use to interact with the set, whereas in somewhere like Decentraland, you do. And you have that access to being able to create spectacle yourself as an avatar, which is then broadcast out to a different audience, which is then reacting to you as an audience in a virtual space.
I'll just posted in the show chat here, the possibility for live to DCL crossover is huge. Last night, someone had a scene where people in Decentraland could control a claw prize machine and grab objects in real life. That is amazing.
That's awesome. I didn't even know about that one, Isle. You send me the link.
Wow.
That's incredible.
Yeah, there it is. And Tang Poco was talking about in 2022, we had a live feed in her club between DCL and a Coachella tent. Yeah, so that's the event I'm talking about, Tang Poco. I didn't realize it was Coachella, so thank you for refreshing my memory. And she says it was amazing to talk to festival goers and party together. Yeah, that was Coachella, wasn't it? Wow. Amazing how time flies. And that was in 2022. Sheesh. To learn more about tonight's guest, Bae Backner, you can check out her website, which I've posted in the show chat, or for those of you listening on demand, in the show notes. Now, if you are new to the Adobe Creative Career Discord, I'd like to take a moment to share one of the coolest things we're working on right now, and that would be the Adobe Creative Apprenticeship Program. This program connects aspiring creative people like you with top creative companies providing the actual training and experience that you need, which also looks amazing on a resume. Think of it like the ultimate internship meets mentorship opportunity. But wait, that's not all. You see, there is another aspect to the program, and it's called commissioned projects. This is where you can get even more experience working on an actual paid project with Adobe. Yes, that's right, Adobe as your first client. Seriously. The details on the Creative Apprenticeship Program, the commissioned projects, and more incredible career resources can all be found at behance.net/resources. That's behance.net/resources. Now, since we only have a few more minutes tonight with our most insightful guest, Bae Backner, if you do have a question, please post it in the chat. Or if you're shy, ask her directly following the show over at her website or on X or at LinkedIn or on Decentraland if you see her roaming around over there, which of course you will. Bae, have you ever had a mentor?
Yes, I have. In lots of stages of my career, but first learned how to be a mentor and a mentee when I was a teacher. So I started my career a long time ago as a teacher, and that was one of the most important things that I ever came across was that connection into people that can just answer your questions and be there when you're coming across all those things for the first time.
And it's something that we offer right here in the Adobe Creative Career Discord. Now, Bae, you produce large-scale virtual festivals and events like we talked about earlier. But what truly makes a great virtual experience besides the people?
The people, number one. So I would say being a host in a virtual space is what makes an event work or not. there are lots of opportunities to become a host in Decentraland and hone your skills. I'm starting to say that it's one of the skills that is going to be incredibly important going forward in terms of the future for creatives. I think it's something we were going to talk about just in terms of going beyond creative practice to mean a creative output, but actually going into being able to create community and connection is what most of the people I'm coming across are looking for, whether my students on my course or the people that I'm talking to when I start researching new Decentraland experiences. What people want is genuine connection, things that have meaning for them as a individual connecting with other people. Our amazing head of marketing at Decentraland talks a lot about the loneliness pandemic, how despite all of these connective technologies, all of social media, we are getting more and more lonely. And it's having a huge impact on people's quality of life, health, and just relationships. And I think if you can be someone who can create an event or an activation or a game or an experience that allows people to connect, allows that comfort zone for people to get bigger, gives them reasons to connect, chat, be more present than you would be on an anonymous social media feed. Suddenly you have something that has meaning and impact to people's lives. And it will transform your own creative path. It really did mine. That going from that first gallery to looking at how I become part of this world and volunteering to create things for the DAO, the organization behind it, and more and more installations, suddenly made me explore a lot of these emerging topics in creativity and be asked to speak and teach and be part of those conversations. So in terms of creating a good event, I think it goes far beyond that to being able to create connection between other people. And if you can do that, you suddenly have this incredibly important tool that you can then either use in your own creative practice or start commercializing, to be honest, because it's what a lot of organizations, career paths are looking for right now, because the big elephant in the room is AI. We said we weren't going to talk about AI, but just as a background of a lot of things are changing. What isn't changing is that need for genuine human connection. And as you say, from your mentoring program, it's just an incredibly important part of a meaningful development in careers in terms of mentoring, but also outside of that, having those genuine one-to-one connections and that being something that you can create. Yeah, that's what makes a good event. It doesn't matter about what the scene looks like. We have some amazingly looking scenes in Decentraland, and we have some more basic. And the quality of the event can be augmented by, of course, the visual environment. What actually makes it is the quality of the host and what magic they can create in terms of the connectivity between the people in attendance. I would encourage anyone listening to just try and explore how that could be part of their creative practice. It's just a huge opportunity opening up.
What's the difference between creating a one-off digital event and something that becomes a recurring community ritual?
Oh, mainly timing and predictability. You want is to be able to create something that happens at the same time, in the same cadence, so whether it's weekly, whether it's monthly, whether it's the first Tuesday of the month, however you structure it, that means that your audience can start to relax into that happening and keep coming back. So you provide an experience that someone can relax into, that they're going to get something exciting or valuable or cozy or dynamic, whatever your vibe is for what you're creating. And then you just keep doing it and your audience will grow. And I think Make is one of the experts that can talk about this with his weekly events, but just starting to talking about it before your event, getting the word out, You don't have to do it in social media. You can do it within the platform itself, or you can start talking about it to the people you meet in Genesis Plaza when you first arrive, and start just having that weekly ritual. It's just cadence of same time, same place, same kind of vibe, and then looking to connect personally with that audience each time. And if you can, connecting them with other people as well.
There's just so much possibility, so much opportunity. And audience, I just want you to recognize that we are on the verge of the next internet revolution right here. So take it seriously. Don't just blow it off. Yes, there was a lot of hype a few years ago, but that has died down. Now is the opportunity to really spring into action, because everyone right now is so focused on AI tools, and AI tools are going to be certainly at the forefront of a lot of this stuff, a lot of this creativity, whether we like it or not. But it's a tool. But I think a lot of times the society forget about the people behind the tools. And what the Web3 movement represents and what it really focuses on is the people behind all of this, to create these incredible experiences, events. So take it seriously and learn it, because you're going to have an advantage over your competition. I'm telling you. How important, Bay, is building community to a creative?
I think we don't talk about it often enough in those terms, but I think it's the make or break aspect of many careers. If we can talk about it in terms of a collector community for an artist, we can talk about it in terms of a fandom for a performer or a musician, but knowing how to offer something to other people. I was teaching this morning, Maslow, the golden triangle of Maslow's hierarchy of needs to my students, of how when you are creating, what you're essentially doing is offering something to your audience. And whatever you offer, hopefully, is going up that hierarchy of needs. So if you've never counted it, but it's basically, it starts with basic needs at the bottom: food, shelter, and then goes all the way up to self-actualization. So having a meaningful, important, feeling like you're accepting of yourself, your capacity, your creative potential. So many great art books or creativity books are written at that apex of the triangle of what it means to have a meaningful life. And if what you're producing as a creator gives that gift, so elevates from a basic necessity up to something that really augments how other people feel, live, have their potential reflected back to them, that suddenly creates a gift that then creates community in turn, because it means that people want to follow and be part of what you're doing, because it provides importance and meaning to their lives. And I know that it can sound a little bit spiritual, but I think for a lot of us that came from a creative path, this is a spiritual journey. And suddenly, if you're doing that with your community, you will take that community with you. So it's about thinking about the gift that you can give to other people, and in terms of using that idea to really spread your own gifts, your own capacities beyond you being an individual. It has to be about connection with other people in whichever form your own personal artistic creative practice takes you.
What are some of the mistakes you see creatives make when they try to build community online?
I think that what we all mentioned about where you were asking about events, like what makes a great event, it definitely isn't the scene. Like, you don't need the most beautiful, the most involved scene. I see a lot of architects making that mistake when they arrive in somewhere like Decentraland and they focus entirely on the architecture. They make something that looks beautiful. They don't think about how interaction and connection will happen in that space, how they can host, how they can encourage that connection, how they can make something work on the level of the avatar. And that's the first mistake that everybody makes. They think it just has to be a beautiful building. It doesn't. The second mistake is really a geographic one, to understand that everybody that comes to the space is from entirely different backgrounds. That in a traditional art gallery, you can kind of predict what kind of people will walk into the space. You can kind of predict where they're from geographically, maybe a little bit about what their political motivations are, maybe a little bit about their age range. You know, you're not going to get a range from 5 to 95 in an art gallery. But in a virtual space, you can't make any of those assumptions. So you can't make assumptions about primary language, cultural background, politics. All of those assumptions have to go out the window. So it's about designing something that either consciously works for a section of that whole community. So maybe you make something that works for a certain demographic, but be specific about that. Or you make something, which is, I think, more interesting for me, that can work on different levels for different people. I mean, an idea of that is we did an installation about Vivienne Westwood, which is a very famous designer in the UK. And if I was creating it in a UK gallery, I would assume a certain level of knowledge about Vivienne Westwood. But in a virtual space, I have to stagger that installation to be accessible for someone who's potentially coming from Thailand and has never come across the work of Vivienne Westwood, to someone who is a Vivienne Westwood enthusiast from London. And having something that works on all those multiple levels is one of the key things about digital spaces. And I think that's one of the mistakes people make, is assuming a certain level of knowledge or assuming a cultural background, because we're so used to doing that innately when we create things in real spaces.
How can someone who's never thought about community design start thinking that way?
Oh, I think look what works in, I'm going to be a bit controversial here. I'm going to say that from my experience, the best community designers have some kind of background in education. That they've either volunteered in leading sessions in educational settings, or they've been a classroom teacher, or they've had some kind of interaction, or they've been in a soccer team or the Scouts, like some way where they've been in physical spaces with multiple people. And I think having that experience of, okay, I have to be very specific about what people do in this space, what happens next, where I want them to go, where do I want them to stand? These kind of questions in spatial design that you innately think about if you've worked with big groups of people in a room or a hall or a soccer field, that kind of thinking translates really well to virtual event design. And some of the best community builders that I've come across, people like Canessa in Decentraland or Job, they've had backgrounds in education, so they have that sense of, I need to tell people what to do in a way that they think that they're doing it intuitive, but actually I'm directing them through this experience because I know that that's what works when you have a lot of people together.
That is really fascinating. I would have never thought to look to teachers and instructors or team-oriented people where they have that training with big groups of people. That makes sense now that you've broken it down that way.
Yeah, and it's that unconscious training that we sort of, all these things that we intuitively learn in real life, and then we see applying to these virtual spaces where the rules haven't been written yet. So it's about figuring it out yourself. And I think people that have seen it in real life have that advantage of going, okay, I need to really, it's called wayfinding in video games, allow people to know where to go, what to do, what's next, in a way that feels intuitive in that environment, but actually they're doing it quite consciously.
And speaking of the wayfinding stuff, it's one aspect of Decentraland that is really cool that you guys have the community role called Welcome Guides, right?
Yes, so we actually have a role that we recruit for, which is Welcome Guides. So people that spend their time in Plaza to actually do this, answer questions, be the first person you meet. So if you jump in, there will be at least one or two people there who will be employed in Plaza to give you that first connection of being the person that you can ask when you're first figuring everything out.
In your own research, Bay, are you starting to see a measurable shift away from attention-driven platforms, or are we still a long ways away from that?
I think it's changing now. I think we've seen the first legal challenges to this come through the courts with the prosecution of Meta around gamifying their platforms as such to impact the health of younger people. I think we're first starting to see those kind of impactful discussions happening with the platforms. And I think we're seeing a backlash to the promise of social media. I know when everyone started on Instagram, there was this promise that if you gained your followers, if you gained your likes, you would be financially rewarded. And I think a lot of successful creators have found that that is not the case, that they can have large engagement and audiences in these platforms and that not translate into sustainable incomes. And I think those conversations and voices are growing. And I think we've seen now people looking for an alternative to that. And for me, as a creator, Decentraland is one of those spaces. So looking to see how we can use these alternative platforms, again, that work for your own creative practice. It's a process of discovery that give that alternative to these, I think this fatigue that a lot of us are feeling around social platforms. And then, of course, on top of that, the difference that AI has brought in terms of the content that we're sharing on socials, that we need to feel now that we have much more reality in that rather than the constructed outputs that we are being served on a lot of the socials right now.
Now, on the other side, I know that Meta, the Meta company, has since shut down their metaverse platform, Horizon Worlds, mainly because it wasn't making any money for them. It was actually losing them money. They had poured in like 80 billion, I think. Should we be concerned when we hear that type of news?
No, I think it's a very different. It's a very different beast. Is a platform created by a large organization that hasn't really got much motivation to understand the audience, how they're interacting. They're serving up another product on their product roster. And I think, interestingly, I think the last thing I heard was that they actually kept it open because there was so much backlash from the community that was actually using Horizon Worlds. I'll need to research how that ended. But a large corporation hasn't got the same connection with their user base. It's just impossible to do. Whereas a group of people that are creating something together, which is how Decentraland was established and how it still works. As you can see, like I see people in the audience that I work with because they're here to support Decentraland. They want to be part of this conversation. I'll make Tangpoko. I'm sure there's others here that I can't see in the audience as well. But it's a different beast. It's much more of a personal connection. It much more has a small town feel than a giant corporation is able to do. And we talk about that a lot, about disruptor versus incumbent. If you're in a large incumbent organization, you can't move as fast or be as close to your user as you can in a smaller, agile disruptor that's coming up out of what users actually are wanting, because a disruptor has to respond really quickly and closely to what users want as they fail, whereas an incumbent has shareholders, has existing audiences, has a lot of expectations around that, and they just can't innovate and disrupt as quickly as those smaller organizations.
Now, when you look ahead, what does a more human connected internet actually look like to you?
I feel strongly that it is like a village, a sequence of many villages, that you have your own village around you in reality. And increasingly that's difficult, but we can still do it with a lot of a lot of effort to get out, talk to our neighbors, talk to the people around us. And then suddenly we have a village as well online. So it's those important connections for your creativity, for your work, for your sense of being part of something. And that doesn't come from being a huge city, it comes from being small villages within that city. Those sort of the family unit, there's what they call, I like in agile development, there's the two pizza rule, that you collaborate with a group of people that you can feed with two pizzas. And then you scale out from that, that you have your street, the people that you know on that street, and then you scale out again to your neighborhood. And that is what's going to be happening in what I hope will be the future of the internet, going away from just these overwhelming social feeds to having those one-to-one, then 1-to-5, 1-to-10 personal connections with your village.
Well said, well said. What are some upcoming events in Decentraland that the audience can look forward to, and how can users join in on this fun?
Well, if you're listening now, if you're in the audience now, in an hour's time, just under an hour's time, there is a watch party going on in theatre. And then we have community events on Thursdays and Fridays. We've got people like Make on Friday night. We've got Ola DCL on Thursday evenings. We've got Rage Party in the Rage nightclub. Make, if you want to correct me about when your event is, drop it in the chat right now. So each week there is a series of recurring community events that happen. We also have events in the theatre like Takeover Tuesdays, we've already mentioned. And then further out, we have one-off activations of different spaces. So we haven't talked about building in Decentraland very much, but you can build new games, experiences, and people launch these and do play tests, play parties. We have an amazing group of people called ABC Decentraland, Community Building Decentraland, and they ran a Winterfest Games series recently. It happens all the time, so all you need to do is go to decentraland.org/events and take a look at what's happening at any point in time. It gives you the full listings, and you can see them in World as well. If you click the little calendar icon, it brings up everything happening in real time, so you can jump in to whatever is live right now. If you want to get involved and do something in Decentraland, I should have a shout out to the open calls. So we run open calls for artists, creators, musicians on a regular basis. If you forget where we are, just go to Zealous, which is one of the big open call platforms, and search for what's live on Decentraland. There's two right now. There's an open call for streamers for theatre, and there's an open call for 3D builders who want to explore gliding in Decentraland, who want to create 3D experiences for the jump and glide emotes. There's probably always going to be an open call there if you take a look. So if you want to get involved and you want a little bit of funding to do that, have a look at the open call terms and put your pitch in. And I read everything that comes through open calls. So it's a great way to have the that kind of first contact with us, start that conversation on your creative journey.
That is awesome. And you mentioned the jumping and the gliding. I forgot to bring that up. That's one of the most fun things that you can experience in Decentraland. That is awesome. Well, Bae, what is on the horizon for you? Is there anything coming up that you like to promote or bring to the listeners' attention before we depart?
My big project right now is I'm working with some of the best studios I've ever worked with to create new, what we call evergreen experiences. So things that you can jump into all the time between events in the theatre. So I started off this year focusing on the theatre, establishing this sequence of events every week that you can jump into in the theatre, chill, be part of something there, parties, movie nights. Then we're moving away from that a little bit. We're keeping all of that going, still creating more and more theatre events, but simultaneously working with studios to create new immersive experiences, really trying to push what's possible for people in a 3D environment. So if you want to come and hang, you have got two kind of options: come and hang in the theatre with us, or increasingly come and hang in either Genesis Plaza experiences or these new indie experiences that the studios are developing. And I'm going to be launching the first of those next week from some new doors that are going to be specially like magic doors that open from the plaza, so you can teleport into these special experiences. So I'm working with some of our amazing community creators. I'm working with some incredible studios. And so those launches will happen over the next few months. And I'm so excited to start sharing some of this work that's been going on, because it's something very different to what you would experience in a normal video game. It's really about these studios and community members understanding exactly what we've been talking about, what makes connection possible, what makes fun and connection just be part of. It's hard because you want to call it a game, but it's much more about this experiential place to be with friends, to hang out, and at the same time have these meaningful experiences together.
Well, we are excited to see what's in store for the future, my friend. So thank you for sharing all of this information. That about wraps it for this episode of Spotlight Sessions. Again, I just want to thank my guest, Bae Backner, for joining us tonight to discuss the future of the internet and where creativity is headed. Be sure to connect with Bae on LinkedIn and visit her website at baebackner.com. That's Bae, B-A-Y, Backner, B-A-C-K-N-E-R.com. Or stop listening to this show and get to creating over at Decentraland. And you can check out Decentraland at decentraland.org to join in on all the fun for free. And if you enjoyed this program, catch all the latest updates for the next Spotlight Sessions and all the exciting content we have here in the Adobe Creative Career Discord by following the upcoming events calendar at the top of the server so you can see what's coming next. I also want to thank my co-producer, Catherine Chu, Lisa Temple, moderators Elizabeth Mock and Justin Roy, and the entire Adobe crew for sponsoring this program and helping to bring it alive. But more importantly, thank you, Discord community, and to everyone who tuned in to listen to me, your host, Justin Bamforth, aka JBam. You can always catch me on Discord, LinkedIn, at Decentraland, or over on my website, justinbamforth.com. Until next time, everyone, take care. For more conversations with creative professionals, subscribe to the Spotlight Sessions podcast or check out the Adobe Creative Career Discord. Links are posted in the show notes.